Thank you, Speaker. I would like to start by acknowledging the custodians and true sovereigns of this land, the Wurundjeri people. The electorate of Richmond was also built on Wurundjeri land, on Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung land. And walking to my Fitzroy office on Gertrude Street each morning, I'm keenly aware of the deep significance of that location to Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people and other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Today, it's one of the most upmarket, glitzy and trendy streets in the electorate. But before colonisation, it was a living space for Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung people. And more recently, after returning from the missions in the 20s and returning from foster care and from other institutions, it became an important spot for Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to reconnect, to organise. And they established the first community-controlled organisations, the Aboriginal health centres and legal centres, the youth clubs and gymnasiums. It was, and it still is, an important social and political hub for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And this land's story of frontier clashes, of massacres, of dispossession, is also a story of the strength and resilience of the Wurundjeri people, who have never ceded sovereignty despite the devastating impacts of British invasion. They have fought to protect their culture and to protect their people in the face of genocide. But the harms of colonisation remain. We see them in the laws and the policies and the racism that cause intergenerational poverty, that cause over-incarceration, that cause deaths in custody. We see them in the destruction of Aboriginal cultural heritage for mines or freeways. And that's why I'm proud to be in a party that continues to seek a shared understanding of this land's truth so that we can work together towards treaty and justice. While I'm on Wurundjeri land, I pay respects to Wurundjeri elders and other First Nations elders past and present. Before I move on, I would like to thank my predecessor. The Honourable Richard Wynne served the Richmond community for a very long time. He was elected last century. And so I'd like to thank him for 24 years of hard work and commitment to the people of Richmond and wish him a very happy retirement. From Parliament. I'm sure he'll continue to do his very hard work outside of Parliament. The Richmond electorate is smart, it's young, and it's twice as queer as everyone else, statistically speaking. We live close together. We are 66,000 people spread over just 13 square kilometres. We are bound by the waters of the Birrarung, from Clifton Hill, Abbotsford, through Richmond, Cremorne and Burnley. We are progressive. We are among the first to declare a climate emergency and to recognise January 26 as a day of mourning and sadness. We are proud of our rich cultural, linguistic and religious diversity. People from Vietnam, from China, from Malaysia, from India, from Greece and Italy, from Somalia, from Eritrea, from Ethiopia, all call Richmond home. And we are home to a vibrant arts sector, the beating heart of Melbourne. And sport, of course, unites and divides us. Everyone knows it, but it is objectively true. We are home to the most livable neighbourhoods, the coolest street, and the second coolest street in the world. But we also have great disparity. 10% of our population live in public housing and over half of our electorate rent their home. That's almost twice the state average. I've lived in the electorate of Richmond for 20 years, and during that time I've worked mostly as an artist, making large-scale public artworks for museums and galleries across the world, drawing people into a conversation about how to create the world that we want to live in. In 2014, I was invited to exhibit in the Sydney Biennale. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the Biennale, think of it as the grand final of the art world. It was a big deal. and I worked on a new commission for almost 2 years. And about 1 month before the show was due to open, I was shipping the artwork on an 8-ton truck on a ferry over to Cockatoo Island, when I found out that the major sponsor of the Biennale, Transfield, was negotiating a multi-billion-dollar contract with the Australian government to operate the detention centres on Manus Island and Nauru. I stood at a fork in the road. Do I fulfil a lifelong career ambition? Or do I follow my moral compass? And what does that even look like? How was I supposed to respond to this? And would anything I do actually make a difference? I came together with my fellow artists. We met with representatives from the Biennale and from the Transfield. We spoke with refugees and advocates. And after deliberations and discussions, trying to get other people to make a better decision, to make the right decision, I realised that nothing could justify my participation in a chain of associations that led directly to the incarceration and torture of innocent people seeking safety in this country. So I withdrew my work. George Brandis, the Attorney General, threatened to pull public funding from any other artist who refused private sponsorship on ethical grounds. Malcolm Turnbull denounced my vicious ingratitude. And that's when we knew it was working. Over the next week, 9 artists withdrew their work until the chair of the Biennale and the director of Transfield resigned. But he didn't just resign. He took his 11% share in the company with him. Under public pressure, superannuation funds divested. Share prices plummeted. The Transfield name was trashed. So they changed their name. And they sold the company to a Spanish conglomerate, which shortly afterwards announced that they would no longer be servicing Australia's immigration detention industry. This was a turning point for me. It made me realise that change is possible and that together we are powerful. After that, I linked arms with my neighbours to stop the east-west toll road that would rip through our community. We barricaded Border Force in solidarity with the men imprisoned on Manus Island. We organised petitions and boycotts, protests and rallies. We shrouded Picasso's Weeping Woman, ending the relationship between the National Gallery and Wilson Security. We dyed water fountains red, we stopped trucks, we crashed parties, we wrote in the sky, we occupied intersections, we disrupted and disobeyed. We negotiated change and we held governments and companies to account. In my final exhibition in 2019, we mapped the thousands of connections between the fossil fuels industry and the arts, sparking a nationwide divestment movement. So it would come as no surprise to this chamber that I made a deliberate decision to leave the arts. I took up a Juris Doctor and started working as a paralegal to support refugees and asylum seekers navigate this cruel bipartisan immigration system. But what good is it, I wondered, helping people navigate a system that is designed to dehumanise, to demoralise and eventually destroy a person? Becoming a politician was never part of the plan for me, but I saw a problem. I was always calling from the sidelines, trying to get someone else in a position of power to make the right decision, when I could clearly see that the politicians we were trying to influence had already been bought. They'd been bought by their corporate interests, they'd been bought by their wealthy donors, and this democracy is rigged in their favour. But I realised something. I realised that these seats are not reserved for them. These seats are for all of us. And so in 2020, I put my hand up for local government, and I was elected mayor of the first ever Greens majority government in the world. a majority young, majority women, culturally diverse council, of which I am so proud, because it leads change in so many ways. We showed Victoria what real climate action looks like, transitioning our community centres off gas and installing the first ever inner urban community battery. We got serious about LGBTIQA+ equality with our first strategy, and we reformed our discriminatory public drinking laws. We supported the arts, our local businesses and public housing residents during the pandemic like never before. But the problems our community faces can't be solved at a local government level alone. The systemic changes we need are being held back by state and federal parties more concerned about holding on to electoral power than they are about creating a truly equal, climate-safe future. Every day, that future is slipping through our hands. Because every day for the people of Richmond, life is getting harder. More and more people are experiencing housing stress and homelessness for the very first time. They are slipping onto the public housing waiting list, which is 120,000 people strong and growing. I've seen how this state government is abandoning our public housing residents with the lowest funding of public housing anywhere in the country. We hear from people who bear the brunt of that every day, and they're desperate for help. I'm talking about Rosalie, a single mother forced to lift her disabled 10-year-old son up steps every day to get in and out of the house, trapped in a holding cell of transitional housing for 10 years. I'm talking about Auntie Tracy, living in an apartment block where tenants were forced to live for years with raw sewage spilling out onto their doorstep, spilling up through their shower drains for years. You literally had to step over it to get to the children's swings. I'm talking about Aisha, a child struggling to breathe night after night as the black mould on her bedroom ceiling spreads. These stories are so common that they have been normalised and internalised. But make no mistake, none of this is their fault. This is a deliberate failure of successive governments who see housing as an investment opportunity for property developers rather than a human right. And because of this, we are walking eyes wide open into a deepening housing crisis. As the calls for maintenance and the desperate need for public housing grows, this government is giving away public housing land to private developers. They're giving away public housing land to private developers. Playgrounds, community gardens, basketball courts, they are giving that to private property developers. The one place that public housing residents forced to live without air conditioning and without balconies can go during heat waves that are getting longer and hotter. Meanwhile, 800 metres down the road at the Fitzroy gasworks site, they are selling off 3 hectares of public remediated land, remediated with taxpayers' funding, to private developers, when they could be building public housing as they promised in 2018. They are neglecting the people of Richmond, and that's why I'm here. Decades of government delay, of underfunding, the hollowing out of our public institutions has affected not just the people of Richmond, but the whole of Victoria. They're building housing, but it's affordable only by name, because no one can afford it. They're building schools, but our teachers are run into the ground. They're building hospitals, but our nurses and ambos have hit a wall. They're building a blockbuster gallery with some lovely spaces for their corporate donors, but our artists can't keep their heads above water. They're striving for gender equality, but on the ground, they harass, intimidate, and bully young women politicians. They're promising renewables, but at the same time, they are drilling for gas in a climate crisis. They say we can't afford more public housing. They can't afford to lift the public sector wage cap. Meanwhile, they funnel money into logging, into prisons, into horse racing, into the fossil fuels industry. The people of my electorate have told me they're struggling. They're struggling and they're terrified because we are so unprepared for what's coming. And we know that there is no social justice without ecological justice. Floods, fires, heat waves, droughts, food insecurity, displacement of people, infrastructure under strain. We all know that we are not doing enough. It's coming sooner than we thought, and it's worse than expected. And yet this government is drilling for gas in our oceans. They're extending the life of our coal-fired stations. They're still logging our native forests, pouring fuel on the fire. We're terrified, but I'm hopeful. Because I have seen that the urgent change that we need is possible, and we know that together we are powerful. I'm hopeful because 500,000 Victorians voted for positive change in the last election. The Greens team in this parliament has doubled from 4 to 8. Inside and outside of Parliament, we are part of a powerful movement to change that is growing to meet the scale of the problems we face. And as your representative in this Parliament, I will fight for First Nations justice, for climate justice, for housing equality, to cap rents and give renters real rights, to build and maintain public housing. I will fight against bigotry and discrimination in all its forms. I will fight for the rights of people with disabilities and a living wage for artists. I will fight for the organisations that connect us, care for us and educate us. Thank you to those who voted for change, and to those of you who have already been part of transformative change in Richmond. My incredible campaign team, volunteers and supporters, my fellow artists and co-conspirators, my Greens colleagues, my dear family and friends, and to everyone with whom I have stood on the picket line. Your strength sparks change, and every day I will amplify your calls inside this Parliament. I'd like to finish by inviting the people of Richmond to join me in demanding a better future for all of us. I am, very humbly, your vehicle for change, your voice inside these chambers. I am at your service. Thank you.